The marble dagger glides between the ribs with a hushed, insidious sigh, as if the blade itself mourns the deed. Crimson blooms across the unyielding white marble of the forum, mingling with the chill kiss of pre-dawn mist, while Senator Marcus Flavius arches in his final, agonized spasm, a man whose whispers of forbidden truths now dissolve into the ether. Overhead, the carved eagles of empire gaze down, their granite eyes unblinking sentinels over a realm forged in deceptions, so profound they might shatter the It is the fragile hush of dawn in Rome, 67 AD, and this seeming stroke of senatorial intrigue will soon unravel into a tapestry of profound malevolence, the extinguishing of a soul who had pierced the veil on the emperor's unspeakable rites, involving the offspring of vanquished foes. The corpse will vanish before the clamor of merchants stirs the air, borne away by shadows that move. The blood will be scoured from the stones by slaves whose tongues are bound by chains heavier than iron, the penalty for utterance, a swift descent into oblivion. By midday, the sanctioned fable will ripple through the aqueduct-fed fountains and steam-veiled bathhouses, yet another patrician claimed by the venomous intrigues devouring the Republic's. Yet Marcus Flavius met his end not for defying Nero's burdensome levies or mocking the emperor's histrionic spectacles on the stage. No, his doom stemmed from a perilous pilgrimage, tracing a macabre breadcrumb trail of diminutive forms into the labyrinthine bowels beneath the Palatine Hill, where the city's titans enacted ceremonies that would unsettle the iron resolve of the empire. Imagine, if you dare, the flickering torchlight revealing walls etched with symbols that mock the sun portals to rites where innocence was. Rome, the eternal city, radiant pinnacle of human ingenuity, guardian of codified justice, architect of veins of water that spanned continents. Beneath its polished veneer, however, festered abominations so profane that the blood-soaked sands of the arena paled to mere divertissement for the idle. These were not the chronicled indulgences of deranged Caesars, nor the sanctioned savageries of the amphitheatre. These were the umbral enigmas lurking in the penumbra of power itself, whispers enduring only in the fevered confessions of expiring bondservants and the veiled allusions of epistles consigned to flames that proved insufficiently voracious. If tales of such veiled chronicles stir your intellect, I invite you to subscribe and share the vantage of your viewing, be it from the shadowed libraries of Europe or the sun-baked archives of the Levant. It is a profound solace to witness this fellowship span oceans and epochs, bound by an insatiable thirst for verity. However shadowed the Roman dominion of the 1st and 2nd centuries AD commanded a vast expanse, from the fog-shrouded crags of Britannia to the sun-scorched dunes of Aegyptus, enfolding more than 50 million lives beneath its aegis. At its pulsing core stood Rome, a metropolis teeming with nigh 1 million souls, where patricians orated amid porphyry columns, and thralls toiled unseen in cloacae that posterity would hail as triumphs of hydraulic genius. This was a polity where the agony of public impalement served as midday repose, where the abandonment of newborns to the elements bore legal sanction and commonplace acceptance, where notions of innate dignity slumbered solely in the stoic reveries of sages like Seneca or Epictetus. Amid this normalized savagery, customs arose that pierced even the armored sensibility. In a realm that roared approbation as lions feasted on the condemned, that bar for outrage stood forbiddingly elevated. The arcana I shall unveil were no fleeting deviations or isolated follies. They constituted methodical, entrenched atrocities, illuminating how untrammeled authority, entwined with arcane spirituality and unbridled malice, could recast the very engine of progress into an apparatus of ineffable torment. Picture the marble halls echoing not with rhetoric, but with the faint, distant cadence of rites that bound the elite in pacts with the abyss, alliances sealed not in ink, but in the fragile trust of the young. The inaugural enigma slumbers interred beneath the Basilica of San Clemente, where delvings in the 1,860 seconds unearthed a warren of subterranean vaults from the 1st century AD. What excavators beheld, and what the Holy See thereafter sequestered from profane gaze, were murals limning tableaux that would upend our certainties regarding Roman sacral observances. The air in those rediscovered spaces, even centuries later, seemed thick with an unspoken dread, as if the walls themselves retained the echo of chants long silenced. The ignition flared in 64 AD amid the cataclysmic conflagration that devoured Rome. As Nero's artificers raised the ashen detritus to erect his Domus Aurea, labourers pierced a skein of passageways beneath the Palatine, antedating the palace's primordial footings. These were no catalogued hypogeums of the Flavian amphitheatre, nor the sepulchral galleries of nascent Christendom. These vaults bore epigraphs in a hybrid of Latin and a debased Etruscan dialect, scholars would later discern, invoking entities absent from the sanctioned roster of Olympian deities. A tattered papyrus shard, exhumed in 1923 from the villa of the papyri at Herculaneum, enshrines a missive from Gaius Vetus Valens to his sibling in Alexandria, circa 71 AD. Therein, Vetus recounts his immersion in what he terms the profoundest arcana beneath the herbs, where surface sovereigns abase themselves before primordial overlords. He evokes assemblies of senatorial luminaries and opulent traders in flambeau-illumined crypts, enacting obsequies demanding the agency of juveniles seized in frontier skirmishes, progeny of subjugated tribal hierarchs and adversarial aristocrats. The epistle limns how these tender captives languished in subterranean sties for moons on end, sustained by loaves steeped in vinous infusions laced with enigmatic botanicals, rendering their psyches supple and their gazes vacant, as though beholding vistas beyond mortal ken. On nocturnal convergences aligned with celestial portents that augurs deemed propitious for congress with chthonic divinities, these youths were conveyed to vaults incised with sigils alien to canonical Roman semiotics, a lexicon of curves and thorns. The enactments within those sanctums would, a century hence, compel the annalist Cassius Dio to lament practices in the city that rendered the anthropophagy of remote savages akin to the mores of enlightened folk. Dio veiled his allusions, yet his peer, the Christian polemicist Minucius Felix, offers a shard of elucidation in his indictment of pagan calumnies against the nascent faith. They ascribe to us enormities which they enact in obscurity, imputing to others the infamies that stain their own concealed hands. The intensification crested under Domitian's aegis, from 81 to 96 AD. Chronicles note an anomalous cascade in those annals, the methodical vanishing of scions from patrician lineages in subjugated provinces, invariably attributed to martial attrition or pestilent visitations. Yet a ciphered dispatch, unriddled in 19, penned by a Britannic legate to his Gallic overseer, it intones, "The hallowed freight from the Brigantes arrives upon the Ides. Assure the convoys attain the eternal city ere the solstice's chill. The divine Augustus harbours acute exigency for immaculate vitae in the oblational renewals." This phrase, renewal ceremonies, eludes all other legionary dispatches, yet recurs in textual remnants from the embargoed strata below. San Clemente hints of a liturgy where vitality was harvested like vintage from the vine. Corroborative relics affirm the dread intimated in these parchments. In 1978, refurbishments at the Palazzo Massimo unearthed a crypt harbouring the ossuaries of scores of juveniles, each marred by cicatrices evoking the protocols in Vetus's correspondence. Isotopic assay fixed their demise betwixt 70 and 95 AD. The Curia forthwith appropriated the relics for sepulture, entombed the locus in Portland cement ere exhaustive scrutiny could transpire a hasty veiling that whispers of truths too incendiary for the light. Envision the quiet horror of those excavators, brushes trembling as they trace scars that mapped not battles, but invocations to powers that demanded the purest offerings. The second arcanum pertains to what Roman nosologies circumspectly dub imperial diuretics, the orchestrated ingestion of anthropogenic tissues and humours as panacea and stimulant among the equestrian and senatorial castes. It embodied a deliberate, therapeutic anthropophagy that endured across epochs at the apex of Roman hierarchy, a commerce that would appall even the most inured lanista. Its genesis traces to Egyptian theriacs assimilated post-Cleopatra's subjugation in 30 BC. Nilotic leeches posited that select viscera, alchemized aright, could infuse the imbiber with the quintessence of the departed. Rome's assimilation birthed a bazaar of the profane, where vitality was vendible as any amphora of Falernian. Galen, leech to the Aurelian sovereign and preeminent savant of his era, alludes in his De Naturalibus Facultatibus to distillates derived from the seminal vigour of subaltern adversaries, transmuted into draughts for those aspirant to usurp their vigour. He delineates an imperial ambrosia, compounded from the cardia of juvenile pugilists felled in the sand, pulverized with aromatics from Serica, quaffed by Caesars, antecedent to pivotal forays, a elixir believed to forge sinews of iron from the forge of foes. This theriacal veracity crested beneath Commodus, who from 177 to 192 AD evinced a mania for devouring the thews of gladiators he had bested in the lists, convinced such feasts would endow him their bellicose mettle. Yet Commodus ventured beyond arena banquets. Arcane ledgers from the Palatinal domain, salvaged in shards from the Byzantine Bibliotheca Marciana, chronicle periodic tenders to the court of therapeutic exemplars meticulously culled offal from condemned malefactors, confected per-syncretic Roman Nilotic Persian pharmacopoeia. A cryptogrammed ledger from 188 AD enumerates the sanctum's arcana. Duodecim ampullae of cardiac ichor from Danubian patricians, conserved in Chian must. Sex portions of cerebral pulp from Teutonic thanes, desiccated and subtilized with Xantish cassia. The hepatic of a Nubian regent's daughter, matured in Mel for septenary cycles. Each annotation chronicles not merely provenance, but the imputed somatic and noetic virtues, fortitude for the heart, sagacity for the mind. Allure for the liver promises of transcendence through transubstantiation. Such indulgences were no Caesarean monopoly. Delvings at Pompeii disclose that affluent plebeians routinely imbibed anthropogenic crua for convulsive maladies, or osseous dust for virile debilities. Charred vestiges in an elite sanatorium evince methodical dismemberment of cadavers for iatric ends. The quarry chiefly thralls and incarcerates, their extinctions masked amid the quotidian toll of urban perils. Most perturbing are the narrations of sympathetic imbibition, the creed that ingesting targeted offal from adversaries conferred their erudition or prowess. Missives twixt viceroys recount the ritual slaying of ensnared literati and hierophants, followed by ceremonial encephalophagy to assimilate their lore. The tertiary enigma skulks amid the crepuscular fringes of Roman cultus, where orthodox veneration yielded to confraternities so exorbitant that the infamous bacchanalia appeared pastoral interludes. These were no commonplace mysteria of Mithras or Isis, but subterranean fellowships fusing erotic brutality, liturgical homicide, and orchestrated noetic flagellation. The confraternity of Nox Tenebris, the perpetual shade, burgeoned circa 79 AD amid Vesuvius's cataclysmic wrath, which pulverized venerable theologies and left the faithful adrift in ash-choked supplication. As ancestral deities faltered against seismic ire, beleaguered its codex, inscribed on a trove of ace tablets exhumed beneath the Pantheon's plinth in 1885, expounds the Magnus Inversio. Obsequies contrived to subvert nativity's weave and bestow sway over the Stygian brink. These convocations mandated proxies from every stratum. Curials, verni, legionaries, plebs converged in hypergeal halls for marathons of rite, spanning dawns and dusk. The tablets delineate prefatory purifications, sensorial eclipses, and pharmaca drawn from imperial peripheries flora. Adepts endured Stygian isolation for quincenaries, subsisting on panis et aqua tinct. Upon ingress to the sanctum, chronicles attest many had forfeited the demarcation twixt veridical and visionary, their forms trembling vessels adrift in hallucinatory seas. The apex oblation entailed the languid excruciation of subjugated hostiles, as initiates partook of their vitae and venereal essences, positing such commingling unlocked dominion over bios and thanatos. Yet the codex avows the aspiration, the hieratic frenzy that unbars the limina inter mundi, a rapture purportedly facilitating parley with ultramundane presences eclipsing the Capitoline triad. Caesarean entanglement crested under Caracalla, 211 to 217 AD. Dio Cassius chronicles the sovereign's thaumaturgic fixation and parleys with peregrine enchanters whose arcana would blanch Levantine Kabbalists. Unvoiced in annals, yet emergent from stenographic epistles, is Caracalla's immersion in Nox Tenebris syncretized with bellicose ambition. Ante grand campaigns, he sequestered in Palatine crypts with noble captives and kin. The sequelae, though veiled, were etched by aghast chroniclers. Dio evokes detainees repatriated to carcers, transfigured in manners rendering euthanasia compassionate, their intellects fractured, lips murmuring litanies to ineffable nominatives, phonemes defying mortal articulation, as if their souls. The noetic stratagems honed by these sects would echo in anchoritic asceticism and Basilean theopneustia. Yet in their natal Roman matrix, they subvened pragmatic ends, forging psyches so methodically sundered as to bridge the quick and the necrotic portals incarnate. their ruinations tuned to a tune with ultra-terrene frequencies. Corroborant surfaced in 1,930 seconds restorations at the Domus Aurea, where sappers unearthed alcoves harboring restraint apparatuses of eerie ingenuity. The bronze bore patina of protracted employ, and spectrography of patinas disclosed unguents and nootropics embalming salves and entheogens, residues of rites that lingered like spectres in the metal's grain. The Quaternary Arcanum encompasses Rome's methodical biowarfare, presaging contemporary toxics and pathogenera by almost 2 millennia, a calculus of contagion that turned the body's own citadels against it. This surpassed rudiment. Its inception dawned in the Judean imbroglio of 66 to 73 AD, when legionary sappers discerned how contrived duress could metastasize banal maladies into apocalyptic scourges within encircled populaces. From empirical augury overcrowding and feculent aquae transmuting grippy to genocide evolved, under Alexandrian polymath's aegis, doctrinal methodologies. A papyrus remnant from Oxyrhynchus, circa 97 AD, enshrines a strategicon for beleaguerments. Amid cannons for sapper trenches and Ariete forges lurks a codicil, de colendo most baleful, culling pathovariants per demotic profiles, precursors to ethnic biotoxins, tailoring plagues to the frail or the fervent. This regimen's scope crystallized in the Antonine pestilence, 165 to 180 AD, which ravaged the Imperium, claiming perchance 5 million shades. Orthodox historiography deems it autochthonous, perchance born from Parthian forays, yet a 1,952 trove of tabelle from an Euphratean castrum intimates contrivance. Epistolary chains, twixt juices and therapeutes delineate conservation of pathogeny over transcontinental halls, amphorae and lyophilics to sustain lethality, cognizance of fomites predating Kochian axioms. They limn modalities for isolating acmes of contagiousness, concentrating inocular for augmented morbidity, arsenal of affliction refined to scalpel's edge. Yet the biowarfare transcended mere agronomy of ailment. Iatric savants discerned pathogenetic synergies, birthing compositae pests, amalgams, overwhelming phlegmatic bulwarks, refractory to palliatives. Apex sophistication attended the Aurelian's sway. Despite his meditations, from his scriptorium emerged directives on morbids, privileging genotypic susceptibilities, enfeebling revolts, sans collateral on the orthodox. Relics abound. At a Colonia Agrippinensis castrum, delvings disclosed hypercausts for microbial incubi, sealed naves, modulating thermae and humor for protracted cultures. Assay of detritus yields biogenic traces, peptones and pathotoxins. The Quinary Arcanum indicts Rome's manufactory commerce in juvenilia for ends eclipsing vulgar thraldom, a syndicate transcending conquest's casuistry, provisioning arcana, ludi, and probatoria. This web flourished under palatinal imprimatur, enmeshed in the cursus of governance. Legates fulfilled stipends for pueri of precise physiognomies, ontogenies, and provenances tailored to the desiderata of collegia and idiosyncrats. A 1,961 cash from Ostia's substructions unveils the chancellery. No patronage spanned. Ludi exacted ephebi for precocious savagery, not bare pugilism but choreographed carnage, laced with eros tableau where adolescence bled into burlesque. Numismatists coveted exotica for their allures or alterities, baubles of the bazaar. Yet paramount patrons, mystagogic cabals, which requisitioned not drudges but hierodules for the urges, vowing catabasis, via hubris, innocence, immolated as pontifex to celestial throne. The syndicate's apparatus rivaled any emporium, nors with aereries for mass transits, sans mutiny, Troy appraising vias for vocations, depots for acclamation or augmentation per specula. Hadrianic archives attest his orchestration of dilation for probatoria imperialia. Lauded as Hellenophile and pontifex, Hadrian ordained institutiones evolutivae, remotes where ethnics endured regimented stressors to probe psychosomatic resiliences, philosophers and therapeutes, deeming it ontology's exegesis. Regimes of inanition, catechesis, morphosis, yielded codices on limina, survivors transubstantiated, some as intuitives attuned to patrician caprices, others as automata for theophanies, their fractures furnishing fidelity to frenzy. Exemplars, wholly reforged, became idola proxies of will, shadows cast by masters' desires. Vestiges span Hispania to Mauritania. At Taraco's complex, barracks for centenaries, with the cenary, perchance paramount. Arcanum indicts Rome's codification of protracted agony via physiognomic and noetic arcana presaging modern nomata by biennia. This outstripped happenstance, malice, or quotidian asperity. It was probatoria into dolors dynamis, fear's fulcrum, a shadow symposium on the soul's scaffold, its cradle, Judean tumult, where deuces found orthodoxy's torments futile against pietists' theopnesty. Under Vespasianid mandate, therapy, a Pergamon codex, by Gaius Stinius Maximus, circa 88 AD, expounds extensio conscientiae ultralimits naturals regimes prolonging torment sans necrosis or narcosis, premised on anatomicae, hematica, neurals, that eclipsed medieval leechcraft. It codifies vascular modulations to sustain sensation sans exsanguination, thermae, humors, caustica for stratified dolors overwhelming cathexes, balefulest, noe martyr, yet yields transcended coercion, protractor extrema, evoked paracusia telepathiae inter supplicia, prolepsis prognostic, congressus with ultraphanes. The court, entranced, posited them as stratagems for scepter and sword, Domitianic expansion syncretized with sophists and hierophants, inducting raptus for thaumaturgy. A 1009 Hadrian's thanatophilia birthed empire-wide academes, veiled as Lycia or Nosocomaea, mustering polymaths to assay conscientiae's abysses. Gradus extremitatis protocols incremented pressures, metra psyches, thresholds where orthopneusty yielded to xenopneusty, anomalies emergent, manuals replicated optima, substrates for ecstasies forge, apices, parens in limbi, quasi, necrotic forms extricated from flesh, percipients of distantes, communicants in glossolalia. These vates subvened, somnia militaria eclipsing relics, though embargoed, affirm, public delvings disclose hypercausts for metra, with gauges for vitae and noemata of lapidary precision. Echoes in eremitism, tarsawuf, arcanae, transcendences via ascesis, yet Romanly, pragmatic, thormata from torment, imperium's unseen sinews, the nexus binding these arcana, the 1969 Vatican delvings yielding the Palatinate Codex, penned in Hadrianic plenitude, it catechized elites and controls pleroma, traffics as founts for biothanatoi, torments fueling theurges, theriacs arming bellators. No decadence is detritus, but riposts to overstretched transhuman stratagems exploiting agony's algebra for hegemony. It passes costae, vitae as vectors, optimized per aqueductal calculus trade-offs in bellum, bureaus, bridles. Frigidly, as if posthumous. Vaticanum's arcana, access pacted in silence, duodenary copies. Orthodoxy, simulacrum or fabula. Yet conferments cascade, weaving shards into syndicates spanning secula. The Vulgate annals exalt legions, lapides, lex's cradle of Occidentis. Excesses, Caesarian paroxysms, not systemic. The Codex subverts, titans reared on regimented repressions dwarfing annals' atrocities. Erudites confront, affirm, and Rome's legacy fractures sophisticates abetting abysses, querying anthropoi's arc and a rites ascent. Proofs compel, traffics birthed boons bellic, lacunae langueur, loci lapidati, codis closi, reliquiae rapt, fragments epistles enigmatict, delvings desultory, voces vilified etch a compulsor but caesarade canvas, enormities eclipsing scriptura, details diaphanous. Perchance the shards skim the sediment, verum veiled in vaults eternal. The solar ascent crests the forum where Flavius's vitae waned. Sanguis scoured, emporia arrayed, Roma resumes its masquerade of marmoreal majesty. Yet, sub lapidibus, in crypts aeons hence rekindled, abide Roma's vere tropea, aulae where puerile ululatus resounded, laboratoria where noemata were vivisected with architecturae acumen, tabularii tabulating turpitudes as policies palimpsest, the aquilae, marmoreal, sentinel, herbs that alchemized torment to thronus, thanatos to theatrum, Roma non corrut barbarius fortioribus, corrut consumpta anima sua.